What's happening right now with oil is making a big mess. I'm going to get into the details because this affects you. This is going to impact the price that you pay at the pump, the price that you pay for your energy, and so much more. Welcome, truth seekers. You've landed in the right place. I want to bring you what others simply can't. So join this grassroots movement of nearly 300,000 people. Hit that subscribe and the notification beside it so that we can conquer this together. Speaking of which, I want to talk about oil and what's been happening with Russia specifically, because Russia's doing a few things right now we should be aware of. Number one, of course, because of everything with Ukraine, this has put a lot of pressure on other countries to not do business with Russia. Don't do that. We're going to sanction you. We're going to make the rules in this way. But at the same time, we could see that other countries have been benefiting from this dramatically. Who are those countries? Let me show you right here and now. IEA, 80% of Russian oil exports went to, hey, you guessed it, India and China in May alone. Now you look at this, looking through the details, India has increased purchases from almost nothing to close to 2 million barrels per day. China raised by 500 kilo barrel per day, and you could see that, of course, being significant. They are buying from Saudi as well, they're buying from others, but the point is that they've been doing more of this. These countries together, this is Russia, Brazil, and India, continuously have been making more deals. The BRICS nations as a whole have expanded. There are some people who would suggest, those BRICS, we don't need to worry about them. They've got a lot of problems on their own. They've got this and that. There's no question about that. However, when you see the number of people, the population, you look at the actual GDP as it stands today, the economy, the size of their economies as a whole. Look at them as a whole. And then you take the next level of that, which is the GDP growth. And we could see that there's going to be more growth in the BRICS nations than there is in the West, just of the very nature of it, emerging markets. And so this is very important when you just take a top-down 30,000 foot view, a zoom out is what I like to call it, and you take it for what it is. They've got something going on here that is going to impact the United States and the West over these next 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years. So pay attention closely. I'm going to show you what's going on with Russia, okay? You got to see this. But first, I want to just explain something. Netherlands set to close Europe's biggest gas field in 2023. Now, I really didn't understand this at first. I thought to myself, why are they closing this down? They've got a shortage. They've got these issues. However, as is explained here, essentially, I'm going to butcher this name, Groningen, okay? All my friends from the Netherlands, please, you can correct me on that pronunciation. But the point is, they've been pulling all this natural gas out. In doing so, they're claiming, that's what they're saying, it is causing earthquakes, a lot of earthquakes. And this is just one place. It is very similar, in my opinion, to what's going on with fracking. For a lot of people, they don't realize this. But fracking causes some serious problems with the earthquakes, although some aren't willing to admit it. But I think that's an issue, and regardless of what's happening, I think that's important to see the fact that, okay, we're getting the earthquakes, this is happening, as a result, we're closing this down. There's one big supply. This is the biggest in the Netherlands, and they're closing it down. So now what do? Oh, now we need to rely on a different country. Now we need to rely on a different source. So of course that puts additional pressure on households like you and I, right? Here we go. European natural gas prices are still far below their levels of last summer, when the continent found itself locked in an energy standoff with Russia. But the rapid run-up in prices this month shows just how vulnerable the region remains to any supply disruption following the slump in imports from Russia. You could see it. The prices go up immediately. You got a little problem, prices go higher. That's not good. Okay, but there's going to be traders, there's going to be speculators that make a lot of money from it, but the average person, they're just going to pay more. The EU could ban imports of Russian natural gas by pipeline. So, like, the issue is not going to get better. The issue is going to get worse. That's why I talk about it all the time. You got to be prepared for yourself. You got to do what you can for yourself. You cannot rely on anybody else, and that includes the group being the government. We've got to do what we can. That's it. We can only be expected to do what we can. And I think as a nationwide, you look at the problems, there's clear, distinct problems. But as a household, there are many actions that we can take. Okay, I talked about this in other videos, and potentially at the end of this one, we could discuss that quickly. Saudi Arabia sought to push oil prices higher. Markets had other ideas. Now, there's many factors here. Of course, Saudi wants the prices to go high. They said we're going to cut our production. All right, here we have it, higher than expected production, and worries about slowing demand are weighing on crude. So Russia's exporting more. That wasn't sort of intended. Saudi's cutting, I think it was 9 million barrels. But when you look at that, I should be clear, down to 9 million barrels per day. So it's like a 1 million barrel cut between where they were previously. And who knows, they could do that more. And they said, we will do this potentially, throughout the whole year, 2023. That may have created a little turbulence within the markets initially, but not necessarily the case. Oil rises as growing demand in China calms rate hike concerns. So it's still around the same. They're saying that it rises. However, at the time you're watching this video, it could be up, it could be down. It's been trading around the $70 range for a while. And it's really dependent on the supply that we're getting. Like, is OPEC actually cutting or are they not cutting? Some countries, they're not following, in line with that. It depends. It really all depends. Russia is basically saying, yeah, I know we got this whole OPEC thing, but we're just going to do what we need to. And they're giving it out at a discounted price. That's what needs to be understood as well. They are doing this, like countries like India and China are willing to take a little bit of a risk here because they're saying, hey, I'm going to get a discount on my crude. I'll take that. OPEC taking notice about what's happening. Putin may not be able to continue this tactic for long. OPEC's member states are rapidly losing confidence in Russia, with Saudi Arabia's energy minister reportedly saying that he was fed up with OPEC members not meeting oil output goals and was seeking more oil output transparency from Russia. So they're making it very clear, okay? I think this is probably an issue too, because it's not just like the US and Russia not getting along. It's not as if Russia is saying this to the West. No, this is OPEC. And so I think it's something that probably they'll have to deal with at some point. I think once the whole issue, Ukraine, I think that they're going to make concessions at some point and say, okay, these areas here, they're Russia, these areas are Ukraine, let's make a deal, let's sit down. That will probably happen at some point, and then the whole oil output will probably get resolved after that. That's my expectation based on what I've seen in history. I've read a lot of this before. We'll see. We'll see how it unfolds. You could look at this one here. Russia endorsed the deal to support developing countries, our friends, in order to achieve the lifting of sanctions from our agricultural sector. This is Putin saying this. We have been deceived once again. We are now thinking about how we can get out of this so-called grain deal. So they want the sanctions lifted. Of course, the rest of the world is saying, oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let you get off scot-free. So I think what they want here is basically they want the grain, because that grain is going from Ukraine to all kinds of different countries, including Iran. They want countries to basically be able to get that coming in, but they don't want to have them make money, get their revenue. Russian oil shipment arrives in Pakistan. Reading through this article is just interesting to see the developments. They've gone back and forth over the many decades. their friends, their foes, their friends. But now you can see what's happening here. I think a lot of countries are just willing to do business with Russia at this time, but they're kind of not, they're not necessarily against the US in many cases. They're saying, hey, let's be friends, let's do trade, US. Oh, by the way, but we're also going to do trade with Russia. The US deploys fighter jets to the Middle East after unsafe and unprofessional behavior by Russian planes. I think a lot of the same thing has happened with China in the Taiwan area there. And for a lot of people, I think it is important that we are staying very clear on what's happening. We look at the oil situation. We realize prices are elevating. What can you do about it? Prices are going up. Okay, is that it? I just got to deal with it? No, there are actions you can actually take. And it's where we keep our money. This video right here up on the screen, check this out, and I'll see you there.